welcome to the very first Cuez webinar. We will plan on doing this every couple of weeks, each time about a different topic or go a little bit deeper on specific topics so that, every time you join in, there's something new that we can help you discover and to help you get the most out of Cuez, of course. These webinars are always recorded, and if all goes well, at the end of the webinar, you should receive a link that allows you to watch the recording or the stream again. And then from there, you can also share it with your colleagues that didn't make it, so you can share the knowledge, of course. So let's get started. Hopefully everyone can see my Cuez window okay. So some of you probably already registered on Cuez, and for some of you, Cuez is going to be very new. So for those of you that don't know yet, Cuez is the newest product from Tinkerlist. It's very much a Tinkerlist 2.0 and a bit more even than that. So that means there's new features, more expanded features. And what I will show you today, a lot of power of customization is going to be in your own hands so that you can really fine-tune your Cuez project to your specific needs. So we will show all of that to you today, step by step. First of all, registering on Cuez is very easy. You just go to app.cuez.live and you will be met with the login or registration window where you can create your account, set up your organization and project. From there, you will end up on this screen, which is your project overview. So at the very top, when you have given your project a name and an image and everything, you will see all of that here at the very top of your screen. And in the top left corner, we have what we call our project switcher. So when you click here, you can switch between different projects and even between different organizations that you may be part of. A lot of you might just work for a single organization and on one of more projects, but sometimes, maybe if you are a freelancer, for example, you could be part of multiple organizations. So in that case, you can use this project switcher to switch between new organizations or between the different projects you are part of. In this same project switcher, you will also be able to create new projects. So maybe in your organization, you do both a talk show and a news show. Then you can create separate projects for each of these types of shows that you create within your organization. So all of that can be done here from the project switcher. Whoever in your organization creates the organization first, so whoever has registered that organization on Cuez, that person will also be the organization owner, and they will see this menu here at the bottom of the project switcher, where you can go to your settings for the organization. From here, again, you can manage all of the projects that you are part of. You can manage your organization members and your organization settings, such as changing the name as needed and changing the image as well as needed. So that is your project switcher here in the top left corner. If we move to the top right corner, from here you can manage your account. So of course you see your name and your email address that you are using to register, but you can also access your account where you can, for example, upload a photo. And this is quite interesting to do because one of the things in Cuez is that you can collaborate with colleagues. So when multiple people within your team are working in the same script or rundown, you will then get to see these images throughout the rundown, so you know in which specific parts of the rundown one of your colleagues is working. So you can then recognize each other by that photo, for example. From here, you can also change your name, change your email address, and if you want to change your password, that's all done here in your account. Something else in that same menu here in the top right is the appearance. And this is something that we were asked a lot in the past months and years, is a dark mode. So we are very happy to say that Cuez does indeed have a dark mode. So via your account in the top right, you can change your appearance to dark, and then everything will switch to this beautiful dark mode. This applies both to your project overview as well as what we will see in a moment inside of a script and rundown. Everything will be in this new dark mode. For now, I'm going to switch back to light mode. There we go. Then Lastly, on this first screen in the project overview, so as mentioned, we have the image of our project and we have the name of our project. And next to it, we have these three vertical dots. Now, this is an action menu that you will see come back throughout Cuez a lot. And you already see it here at the bottom as well, for example. Whenever you click this one, it opens some sort of menu with specific actions for that section of Cuez that you have clicked on. In this case, you see, for example, that you can go to your project properties, or you can then change the name and update the logo or remove the logo if you want, and save your changes if you have made any changes. So it's always nice to give your project a little image so that in your project switcher, you see those images as well. It just adds a little bit to the feeling of that project, of course. Then below, we can also access our member management. And so again, initially it will be one person that registers the organization and the project on Cuez. But from there, you're going to want to invite all of your colleagues, your team members. So that can be done by managing the members here. So when you click, you'll see maybe you already have people in your organization. You'll get to see them here. And you can click invite members in the top right, enter their email address, select the role you want to give them. We'll come back to what the differences are between these roles. And then once you have selected the role, you can click invite, meaning that that person will then receive an email with an activation link so they can click it and get access to your Cuez project as well. Then below, we have an overview of what we call episodes. So in Cuez, you will see the word episode a lot, and basically an episode is a different name for a script and a rundown. Because in Cuez, a script and a rundown is one and the same single document. So to give that a nice name that we can refer to, we went with an episode. So by default, you will see the overview of your active episodes, so the ones that you are actively working on within your team. But you can also archive episodes, so they will end up in the archived section. And of course, you can also delete episodes if you no longer need them, and they will then end up in the deleted section here on the left. In your episode overview, you then see the episodes that you have currently created. On the side of each episode, you see these three dots again, so that's another action menu, this time with options that are specific for our episodes. So we can open the episode, open it in a new tab, share, we'll come back to that in a moment, and you can of course also duplicate an episode now. What's nice about the duplication feature is that you could, for example, create a very first episode that will serve as some sort of template. So you can create your base template, your base structure of your episode, and then duplicate it each time you want to create a new episode. So if you want to create the show for tomorrow or next week, you can start from your template, duplicate it, and then adjust it according to what you need in that specific episode. Then, before we dive into an episode itself, I'll quickly check if there are any questions in the chat. I see Eric, welcome Eric as well, being very happy about our dark mode, of course. I think a lot of people are happy with our dark mode. Then, if we dive into an episode. So what I'm about to show you is a bit of an example we have prepared that is based on a talk show. So this is something we use to demo a talk show episode in Cuez. But as you've seen in my project switcher, you can really use Cuez for any type of show that you want to create. So if you do live events, sports, esports, talk shows, news, you can use Cuez for anything, exactly because you can customize it to your own specific needs. So let's dive into our playground episode for a talk show. So once we arrive in our episode, from all the things we see here on our screen, we'll start at the very top, and in the top left corner, we see again the title of our episode. I can click here and change the name if I want to update it to something else. And very important, next to it, we see these three dots, which is a very important action menu within our episode ourselves. So if we click here, we see multiple options, and we'll come back to some of these in more detail in a moment. But you'll see that from this action menu, you will have the option to print, share an episode, duplicate, archive, and also to access your trash. So if you delete something from within an episode, you can access the trash within that same episode where you will see your deleted content, allowing you to restore it as needed. We also have a way for you to manage block templates, and I will explain in a moment what that is, as well as managing your columns and deleting the episode, for example. Then below here, we see our episode itself. And by default, the first time you enter an episode, you will see it in a hybrid view. So you'll see a rundown on the left and a script layout on the right. So this is very handy immediately. So you have two separate layouts, but you can get them combined on your screen side by side. Then, depending on your role or personal preference, you can switch to either one. From the hybrid view, you can collapse your rundown by clicking this arrow button. Or in the top left corner here, you can switch to a script-only layout or to a rundown-only layout. So depending on your preference, you can use whichever layout you want. For now, we'll stick to the hybrid view so you can see things changing on both sides at the same time. Then, in your rundown layout, you'll see that, so in a moment, I'll explain a little bit more the structure, but you'll see here at the very top, you also have this little icon that you can use to expand all of your items in your rundown. So if you click here, you see even more content, and you can click it again to collapse everything to make it more compact. So again, depending on your specific needs on what you are trying to do or what you have to do for your role, you can show as much information as you need or even hide information that you do not want to see. Then, how will you actually build an episode in Cuez? So first thing to know for that is the different elements that we have in Cuez to build your main structure. So in our rundown view, you see quite clearly that first of all, we have parts. Inside of parts, we have items. And then inside of an item, you can add what we call blocks. So your parts is what you can use to create your very first, your highest level main structure of your episode. So that can be, for example, your first part can be everything for your show open or your pre-show items. Your second part can be the show itself or the first part before the commercial break, all the way until your show close or the goodbye message or whatever it is for the specific show that you are trying to create. So these parts will form that main structure. Then within your part, you will add your items. And that can be, for example, a countdown, a pre-show countdown, your welcome, an interview with a first guest, a first topic that you will discuss. Things like that will group together into an item. And then inside an item itself, you will then add the separate elements that make up that item itself. So for example, in our welcome, if we look on our script side, again, we'll go into more detail in a moment, but in our welcome item, I see clearly I have some stage instructions, I have grams, I have an EVS, so a clip that might be playing, there's some straps or lower thirds that I need, presentation text, and so on. But all of these different elements, these different blocks, all make up my welcome item. So that is what I see here in my structure. Now, how do you create this structure and these parts, items, and blocks? So when you first enter an episode, it will more than likely be empty, but you will see this add block button. You see this both in your rundown side and all the way at the bottom in your script side as well. When you click your add block, you get this drop-down menu. You see your headings that you can choose from. So these are your parts and your items. And below that, you see the different blocks that you can choose from. So first, we will add a part. We'll call this a webinar part. And then either we click again the add block button, or when we hover over our part, we can click our plus button here at the front. That plus button shows us the same menu. And here we can now, for example, add an item within our webinar part. Within the item, we can continue, again, click our plus button, and this time we will choose one of the blocks that we have available. So maybe I want to add a clip, for example, like this. So like that, you can build your main structure, part by part, item by item, and then inside of each item, you can add the different blocks that you may need. Now, the rundown besides acting as a nice compact rundown view of your episode, this also acts as some sort of shortcuts for your episode. So when you hover over a part or an item, for example, or when you have your blocks visible, same on this level, you can click on these badges that you see here at the front, and that will make your script scroll to that specific section. So if I want to quickly navigate to my part that has everything for my show close, I can click on my little badge, and here my script will immediately jump to my close part, and I can see all of my content here and continue my show. So very easy to navigate your episode by using your rundown as shortcuts to those specific parts of your episode. Quickly check if there's any questions in the meantime in the chat. No, all good, perfect. Then within both your rundown and your script side, and so everything that I've shown so far, the add block and the plus button at the front, that is all available on the script side as well. So here again, you can choose whichever side you prefer working on or whichever layout you prefer working on. You can perform these same actions in the script side. So again, we have our plus button to show our menu, and at the bottom, we have our add block menu to show the same. Once you have a couple of parts, items, and blocks in your episode, maybe you come to a point where you want to reorganize them, and maybe part 2 needs to become part 3 or something, or you want to switch the position of items. Then you will see that whenever you hover over a part, an item, or a block, you see these 6 dots in front. You can grab these 6 dots and then drag a block or an item or a part to a different position. So if I want to move, for example, my EVS titles a bit higher, I can just grab it. I see that blue line in the background, so that's going to assist me in knowing where I will drag my card or my block towards, and I can now let go, and I have changed the order. So again, this can be done both in the script and the rundown side, depending on what you want to do. This might be more convenient to do on the rundown side because it's all more compact, so it's easier to move something multiple parts or items lower, but that's all up to you to see how you want to use it, of course. Then, if we want to delete something or perform other actions on a part, item, or block, we can, instead of grabbing these 6 dots, we can simply click them to open our menu. From here, we can, for example, open the details. If I do that, I get this side panel where I can see all of the content of, in this case, my EVS block. I can close it again. And some of the other options here are I can duplicate it, I can add a comment, which we'll show later. I can edit my block template, which we'll come back to in a moment as well. And I can also delete my block. When I do that, it of course disappears from my script and rundown. And if we go in our action menu here at the top, go to our trash, I see my block that was just deleted. So I can always keep track of my items, parts, or blocks that were deleted. And if I want to restore it, I have my 6 dots again, so I can simply drag it back into my episode, let go, and it is now restored, and I can continue working with that. Now, you've heard me say the word block a couple of times by now. So we have blocks here in our script view, and if I expand my rundown view again, we see a lot of blocks as well. So blocks are going to be one of your main building blocks to create your episode. Now, what's good to know is that there are different types of blocks available in Cuez. So whenever you first register on Cuez and create your very first project and episode, we will give you a couple of default blocks that you can immediately start with. But what I will show you in a moment is that you can also manage these blocks. So this is where Cuez gives you a lot of power to customize it to your specific needs. You will be able to either edit the existing blocks to your needs, or even start from scratch and create your own custom blocks the way you want, with all of the fields that you want to have in that specific block. But first of all, it's important to know that we have 2 main types of blocks. And for that, I'll click on the plus button on the script side, because here, underneath our part and item, our block section starts. And first of all, we see a couple of blocks that have the letter T in front of them, and we also see some blocks that have the word Q in front of them. These are our 2 main types of blocks. They are text blocks and Q blocks. Very simply put, a text block is what you will use mostly on your script side to add some sort of text, whether those are, for example, stage instructions, text that needs to go to a prompter, something for your presenters, any type of script text that you need to add to your episode, that will be done with text blocks, for example. A cue block often has more of a technical aspect to it. So that is a clip, a graphic, a piece of audio, a strap or a lower third, something that you might want to send to, for example, a vMix, an EVS, OBS, things like that. So those are your main different types of blocks. And what's good to know is that on your script side, you will see both text blocks and cue blocks, while in the rundown, you will only see your cue blocks. So if you are looking at your rundown and you are in a light panic because you don't see your text blocks, don't worry, this is normal. Just open your script on the side and you can keep track of all of your text as well. Now, as mentioned, we give you some of these block templates already to start with, but from there, you can customize them to be however you need them to be. So you can either from this drop-down menu behind the plus, you can go to manage block templates, or again, our action menu at the very top of our episode, we also have our manage block templates menu. If we open this one, again, we see our text blocks and our cue blocks. So for those of you that already registered and you have had a look at this, you will see that the ones I have here in front of me, there are already a couple of custom blocks here that I have created. If I'm correct, I think all of you start with prompter and presenter tablet as text blocks. And in regards to cue blocks, it is clip, graphic, audio, and straps, if I'm correct. But from there, you can take any block, click on, again, the three dots to open an action menu. And from here, you can either edit a block template, duplicate it to then modify it for a different type of block template, or archive it if you say that you don't need it anymore. If you archive them, they go here at the top underneath that second tab. If you want to edit, we simply go to Edit Block Template, and then you have a couple of options. First of all, we can click the name of our block. So in this case, it's my prompter block. When I click it, I can give it a different name. I can choose whether or not I want to see the badge in the script. So the badge is, here in the background, you see EVS, grams, strap, and so on. That's the badge. So you can choose to hide it if you want. And you can change the color of your blocks. So you have a bunch of colors to choose from. So you can really visually, that will help you distinguish between what is prompter text, what is instructions, what are clips, and so on. So those are your first options for the customization. And then for a text block, you have your text field. You can customize your text field. You can say, I always want this text from my prompter to be in bold or italics. Maybe it always needs to be uppercase. Maybe you want to give it a color. All of these things you can customize by editing this field. You also see a very important checkbox here below, which is to choose whether or not you want to include, in this case, the text of my prompter field in timings. Later on in the webinar, when I explain timings, we will come back to this because Cuez can help you a lot in regards to timings. So this is for a text block. A cue block is more advanced. So when we go to edit a cue block, you see that you can have different types of fields. And so first of all, a cue block like the clip that you will start with, it will have a title, so you can always clearly see what this one is about. You can also have a media field, so you can upload your videos, images, audio files, things like that. You can have what we call label fields, and you can add more text fields as well. How you do that is with the button here in the top right. You click Add Field, and then you see the 4 different types of fields that we have available for you. Plain text will be a single line of text that is unformatted, so perfect for something like a title or anything that just fits in a single line. You could have a text area, so if there is something that you need a bit more space for, maybe you want to add out words or last words or something to a video clip, or maybe voiceover text, this can be done via a text area, for example. Labels, I'll show you in a moment what we did with sound. Label is kind of like a drop down menu that you can add into a block, so you can easily select a specific option. So maybe for a graphic, if you want to select whether it's going to be a landscape or portrait, or maybe for a video clip on from which source that will come from, things like that you can easily do with labels. And then of course the media itself, where you can upload your actual media. So if we have a look at our media field, here I see it's of the type video, and again I have chosen to include it in my timings. If I look at my sound, which is a label field, I see here that I can make it a multi-select so that I don't have to choose one or the other, but I can have multiple selections active at the same time. And you will also see that for most fields, you have an option to show them in a separate row. So by default, this is usually deselected, meaning that depending on how wide you make your rundown or script layout, the fields will go next to each other so you can make it as compact as possible. But if there is specific information that you want to have on a separate row to add to the visibility of that field, then you can check this box to make sure that goes on its own separate row as well. Then as for the labels, I have a couple options here already, and we can also add extra options. So you see here option 1, click my action menu, I can give it a new name, give it a color, or delete it if I don't need that option anymore. So this is how you can customize blocks. So again, this can be done either with the existing blocks so you can fine tune them to your needs, or you can just create a block template from scratch, give it a name, give it a color, and of course select whether that is going to be a text block or a cube block. So that is one of the steps that you can use to customize the project to your specific needs. Again, quickly check the chat. All good so far. Perfect. Quickly peeking onto my preparation to make sure I do not forget anything. Yes, when you add items and blocks in your script and rundown, you will always see these little numbers in front as well. So here you have them on the script side, and on the left in my rundown layout, I have the same thing. So this numbering is going to help you keep track of specific items and blocks. When you are preparing a show, at a certain point, you start calling out certain video clips, or when you are talking with your colleagues about certain clips or graphics, then you can easily call out, hey, it's graphic 1.5, for example. You just go in your rundown, graphic 1.5, and immediately you are at the correct position, so you know what everyone is talking about. Then, when you are creating your episode, what's nice, of course, is that you can collaborate with all of your colleagues at the same time. So you do not have to wait for one person to finish before the next person can jump in. No, whether it's 2 people, 5 people, 20 people, all of you can just jump into the same episode at the same time. When that is the case, in the top right corner, you will see the avatars appear, so the little profile pictures of the different colleagues that are actively working in the episode. They will appear here in the top right corner. And on top of that, throughout the episode itself, you will also see those avatars appear to indicate which specific block your colleagues might be working on. So again, very easy to keep track of that and collaborate to, in a team, create your episode. Another step that's going to be interesting when you are working together with your colleagues is the fact that you can leave comments throughout your episode. So you see that you have this commenting column here at the top, again, both in your rundown and your script layout. And underneath, whenever you hover over a part, an item, or a block, you see the commenting icons appear. So on whichever level you want, you just click the icon, leave your comment, and there you go. This icon now persists, so it's always visible. So immediately you know, oh, there's a comment on my welcome item. I can click here, see what that comment is. Once everything is taken care of, you can just resolve all to make that disappear again if you want. Then, if we continue on the topic of customization, and so we've seen so far that you can custom create all of these blocks and block templates the way you might need them within your team. You can go a little bit further. So within your rundown, I'll show it here on the rundown side, You can also color code your items. So maybe you have certain items that need a little bit more attention, and maybe there's a specific guest that needs some sort of preparation, or if you do esports, you want to bring focus to the actual games, but not necessarily the post-game discussion. What's nice is that you can then color code your items to make these grab more attention. So my item 1 and 2, as well as item 5, this is what an item will look like by default. But if you click the dots here in front to open our menu that we saw earlier, one of the options here is the item coloring. So now you can choose to either give your item a background color or a text color. And so you see my item 4 has a background color, my item 3 has a text color, for example. So if I want to make my item color maybe purple, I do it like this. And now I see my item 1, again, both in my rundown and my script view with this color. So it grabs my attention. I know this is an important item, for example, and that's visible for everyone looking at the episode. The next step in customization or adding more info to your episode is by the use of columns. So both again on the rundown and the script side, we have this plus button. When you click here, you can choose to show and hide different types of columns. First of all, we have our timings, which we'll go into detail in a moment. Queuing, same thing. We'll come back to that a little bit later. But we can also add different notes columns to take different types of notes. So by default, when you first create your project in Cuez, you will have a notes column. But from there, you can also custom create your own columns as you see fit for your specific show. So we can enable a notes column, for example, and maybe also a sound column. I now have these notes columns here available, and you can also drag your center line if you want to give more space to your rundown in this case, for example. Now I have my columns here available. So on a part level, an item level, or also on a block level, I can add different types of notes as needed. So maybe for my EVS, I want to mention something about the sound. Maybe this has to play at 50% volume, whatever it may be. I can add my note in my notes column like that. Each person within your team can choose which columns they do or do not want to see. So that really allows you to customize your view to your specific needs. If you are a technical person that wants to see all of these different technical notes columns, you can enable them. Someone else within your team that has nothing to do with it or does not want to see that on their view, they can simply disable these columns. Now, if you want to add more custom columns, you can do that either from this plus menu and go to your add column, or again, you can use your action menu here in the top left and go to your manage columns section. You now see again all of the columns that were already created within your project, or maybe certain columns were archived, meaning you do not want to use them anymore, then you see them in the archived section. If you want to add a new column, you can go here in the top right and add your new text area column. From there, you can customize each column by, again, giving it a default cell style. So in this case, for example, I chose for my EVS column to have it be in italics and have purple text, for example. For me, I did that because my EVS block also has a purple color. So for me, that creates some sort of link between the two to add to the visibility. I can also add a default cell value. So if I want to always have a certain value be in that column for each block, item, or part, I can do that. So maybe, again, that is a certain volume setting. Maybe that's always 50%, but then you can still change it afterwards in the column itself. However you want to use that, you can use default cell values. So that is customizing your view with columns, which again, you can custom create as needed. Now, the fact that you can customize your view with or without all of these columns added to your view brings us to our printing options, for example, because in Cuez, printing is easier than ever. We use the what you see is what you get method. This means simply that you create your own view. So for example, I want a print that is based on my rundown view. I want to add my sound and my EVS column, and I want to see some timings as well. Perfect. I now have my own personal view that I can now print or save as PDF. How do you do that? You can either use your keyboard shortcuts, so Command P on Mac, Control P on Windows, or again, I mentioned it, our action menu here at the top, very important one. The very first option you see here is the print option. So you can click print. We will show you a preview. Depending on the content that you have created, you might have to switch between portrait and a landscape to make everything fit a little bit better. And then you can either print or save as PDF. Now, to help you make your content fit on the print, what's nice to know is that you can also make columns wider and smaller. So if I want to make my EVS column a bit more narrow, if I know it's always a little bit of text in here, I can just adjust that size. And then again, on my print, that will make sure that everything will fit a little bit better as well, of course. So that is your printing. Let me disable these already and go back to my hybrid view, rundown and script side by side. There we go. Like this. Then, of course, printing, that's all very nice. We know a lot of you still like to work with paper to take notes and things like that. But the one main disadvantage of working with prints and PDFs is, of course, it is a snapshot in time. So when your colleagues or yourself, you continue working in your episode, that means that you are making changes that will not be reflected on your print or PDF, unless, of course, you make a new print or PDF. So an easier option or a more efficient option would be to share your episode with the team members that need it. For that, we have our share button here readily available in the top right corner. And when we click, we see two different options that you have available. You can either copy the link, which means that you can then send that link to other people that have access to your Cuez project. They can click it and they will immediately open that episode and start working in it. A second option is our public link. So when I click here, you get this link that you can easily copy. And when you then open that in a new window or in a new tab, and I believe I have now, if all goes well, you should be seeing this view now. So in this share view, this public share link, again, you have a couple of layouts that you can choose from. So in the top left corner, you can choose whether you want that share link to be as a rundown view, a script view, or what's nice is a tablet view, which is perfect if you are the presenter, the host of a show, for example. You can open this share link on an iPad or an Android tablet. You can change the font size to your specific needs. There's arrow buttons in the bottom that you can use to switch to previous items or next items. And because right now in our tablet view, we are also seeing our cue blocks, I can filter my view. So I can say if I only want to see my text blocks, or maybe even only my presenter text block, then I can just filter my view to just show what I need to see on my view. Same goes, for example, in the rundown and the script layout. You can use your filtering here to adjust that view to your specific needs. You can also click this header here at the top, in which you can then select your columns that we have added in Cuez itself. So if there are specific columns that you want to add to your shared view, again, you can add all of these and adjust the share view to your specific needs. So again, this is very nice if you are an external person or you want to share your episode with someone external that does not necessarily have access to your project. The share link is a good way to go, or for your presenter to read the text from a tablet, or maybe a camera operator wants to mount this underneath the camera. Things like that are perfect to do with your sharing view. Now let's switch back to Cuez itself. Let me quickly check the chat here. Sorry, Andreas. Can you see all the cue blocks in an item in the rundown without expanding the rundown? I'm not sure I 100% understand your question, but so by default, you can collapse everything so that you can only see parts and items. And then you can choose to either open an item one by one. So if I only want to expand item 1, I see everything and the rest of the items are still collapsed. Or I can use the button here at the very top, and that automatically expands all of my items. So I hope that answers that question. Then let me see. I believe timings is then next because I also have to keep track of the actual time so we stay within our time limit for the webinar. So let me switch to my rundown view to give ourselves a little bit more space. So as I've just shown, we can use the plus button to show and hide different types of columns. One of the columns available is our timings column. And so you saw me enable this column. And when you do that, by default, we will already enable the estimated duration and the front time. But as you can see here, we have 8 different timings available for you to choose from. So again, depending on your personal preference or the needs in your specific role, you can choose to add as many of these timings as you want. So let's click them all. So your view can go all the way to this where you have all of your different timings available. What's nice here is that you can then choose, depending on which of the timings is the most important for you, you can grab one of these columns, so maybe the part timer, and move it to a different position. So if I want to move it here, I now have that one as my second column, for example. That also works with your notes columns, by the way. So if you want to add your notes to the front, to the back, or at different positions, you can just drag and drop these columns to have them in the specific order that works for your needs. Then, within our timings, so let's start with the actual duration. So if we quickly look at our blocks. Now, for all of your different blocks, or depending on how you have them configured, if we go to our edit block template for our EVS, if I have media in my Q block and I have selected the type video, so let me maybe do that with a video clip. That one is configured correctly. So if I go from my video clip to my media field, I had my checkbox where I can choose to include my timings in my estimated duration, yes or no. Same goes for text blocks. As for your text field, you can choose whether that needs to be included in your timings, yes or no. Now, why is that important? Well, that is because Cuez can calculate the estimated duration for you automatically. So if you were to upload a video clip in your EVS block, and for example, that is a 3-minute video, then Cuez would automatically fill in an estimated duration of 3 minutes. If I have, for example, a text block, so I will have to switch to my script view, show my estimated duration with a text block. So if we look here at our prompter text, Cuez can also automatically calculate, based on the amount of text in my text block, how long it would take to read that text. So that, again, is that checkbox where you can choose to have it included in your timings or not. Then that can be calculated automatically. From there, you can always override your timings. So if you say, okay, this is not 5 seconds, but maybe this is 30 seconds, I can simply click in here and override my timings. By default, your automatically calculated timings are shown in this darker color. And once you overwrite it, it becomes this blue color. You can always click the little arrow icon next to it to reset it back to its automatically calculated value. Now let me switch back to my rundown where I have all of my columns open. Here we go. So that overwriting of estimated duration, you can do that on the block level, but you can also do that on the item level as well as on the part level. So your item will calculate automatically based on all of the blocks that make up that item what the total duration would be. But as you see here, I have overwritten that value with 12.5 minutes. So if I quickly reset it, you see we have 2 minutes and 12. But again, if I want to make that 12.5 minutes, I can do that. Same goes on the part level. From there, so we have our block level, our item level, and our part level. And if we move one level higher, we are all the way at the top, and then we are talking about timings on the episode level as a whole. So in our episode, we can also say, okay, what time do we go on air with our show? So maybe that is 12:45. And what time would we go off air, or how long do we want our show to be? So if I say this is a 1-hour show, then that means we go off air at 13, so 1:45 p.m. Once I have my on air, my off air, and my duration of my show, as well as the estimated durations of my separate blocks, items, and parts, Cuez will then also automatically calculate for you the over-under duration. So if we know that we are targeting a 1 hour show, then we know how much content we already have based on our estimated durations. Cuez will then tell me that I am currently, in my example, missing 44.5 minutes worth of content. So I know I have a little bit more work to do, so I can add more content to reach my 1 hour goal. So for example, if I exaggerate in my part 2 and make that a 55-minute part, I now see that I am 9 minutes and 13 seconds over my target of 1 hour. So I can very clearly follow up on my situation. Do I have too much content? Am I missing content? Do I still have to add to reach my 1 hour target? Now, our on-air and off-air times, we also use these in different calculations throughout Cuez. So for example, our front time and our end time, these also, and the back time, sorry, these also use your on-air and off-air times as a starting point. So if we know that our show starts at 12:45, then that means our very first front time will also be 12:45. If my first part is 13 minutes and 51 seconds, then my end time is also automatically calculated. Same goes for the back time, but this starts, so to speak, at the end of the show. So this one is telling you what is the latest possible moment in time that I should start part 1 to still end at 13:45, for example. What's nice is back times are overwritable in Cuez. So if you want to overwrite that automatically calculated value with something that deviates from that calculated value, you can do that. So maybe here my part 2, maybe, my item 2, maybe that's not 12:48, but maybe that is, 12:46, maybe let's make it like this. So again, we see it in blue because I have it overwritten and it's still within a calculation that makes sense. If I were to make this 12:55, for example, I still see this one in blue, but I see a couple that have now turned into a red color. And that is to help you indicate that there are a couple of back times that now technically no longer make sense because you have an item that happens before another one should start. So a lot of colors and things like that will help you make clear if your timings are good or is there some sort of conflict that you might have to double check. All of these things will become visible in your different timing columns. Then we also have a part timer. So by default here, for example, this will be empty. So if we know our part, technically this is going to be 13 minutes and 51 seconds, but maybe again, I want to deviate from that a little bit and I want to say maybe this is 10 minutes, let's make it. I will now see that in my first item, we also start from the 10-minute point, but after that, I see that I'm going to be short on time. So maybe if I make it in my example, let's make it 15 minutes. This, I see that when I start item 1, I still have my full 15 minutes available for counting down. And by the time I reach item 2, I will have 2.5 minutes remaining of my 15 minutes. So like that, I can set my part timers that will then automatically calculate my values spread over the different items available in that part to give you extra indications when it comes to your timing. And then we are almost there, so hopefully we'll manage to finish on time. One of the last things in regards to timings is our queuing mode. And let me just disable a couple of timings here. So let's get rid of part timer and maybe back time as well, like this. So if we see here at the very top, we have the word live. And when we click, we have a couple of options. So first of all, we can switch between a live show or a recorded show. The main difference is that for a live show, you will have the green and the red flag, so your on-air and off-air times, While if you switch to a recorded show, you will not have the option for on-air and off-air because, yeah, that doesn't really matter that much. Your main criterion is going to be your on-air duration, and so the total duration of your show. Now, here at the top, we have our queue mode. So if I switch this one on, I get this black bar at the top, our queue overview. Here we will see in a moment all sorts of information about our episode as we start queuing. And so the moment you go live, and so technically 10 minutes ago at 12:45, I would have started my show and start keeping track of my timings. So how do we do that? We have a new queuing column here at the back, but again, you can grab that column, put it somewhere else closer to the front if you like that. And in our queuing column, we have our play buttons. So if I want to start my show, I can click my first play button. And we now see here at the top, I am 10 minutes into my show. And because again, we said start at 12:45. And here in the top right corner, I see my current local time, 12:55. So I can keep track of that. I see that there are 49 minutes remaining until the theoretical end of our show. I also see an over-under timer, which is going to show you the difference between your estimated durations and if you have already done some timings in your show, that will update live. And so here by default, we see our over-under duration compared to our show duration. But here, this one that is currently red updates as we queue through our show with new updated information. Next to it, we also see what we are currently queuing. So in this case, it is my part 1 that I'm queuing. I'm 1 minute into it. I see my progress bar. I have 12 minutes and 40 seconds remaining until the theoretical end of my part. And here on the right, I can either click this button to queue my next part, or as you see mentioned below, I can click the space bar to queue my part 2. So when you are queuing on the part level, the next thing that you queue will always be the next part. So you stay on that same level. So if I do that, I move to my part 2. If I were to queue on the item level, so maybe here my welcome item, you now see it's item 1 and my next will be item 2. So in that case, we stay on the item level. So just like this. As we are queuing or moving through our parts and items, you see that in my actual duration column, I can keep track of how long I actually spend in my specific item or in my part. The one that I'm not timing anymore, that is fixed now, of course, but the one that is still currently timing, I see my time counting up. I also have these little indicators here at the front, so orange arrows pointing down or a red arrow pointing up or a green dot to indicate if you are under your estimated duration, over your estimated duration, or right on top of it. So again, a lot of information to help you keep track of all of that. Now, this queuing, that is usually done by one specific person in your team, but the rest of the team might, of course, want to follow along with that queuing. So in that case, you can use the follow queue mode here in the top right corner. So anyone that wants to follow along with the queuing can click this button. What happens then is the PA, for example, when they are queuing and they queue the next item, everyone that is following will see their script or rundown, whichever view they have open. They will see that scroll automatically to have the actively queued part or item always scroll to the top. So that makes it very easy to stay on the correct part of your episode. So that's everything for timings. In a nutshell, of course, we will do a separate webinar where we go into more detail for all of that. Then I see I have 2 more minutes to quickly show our prompter and then finish the webinar. So in the top right corner, we have the prompter button. So if we click here, similar to with our share view, we have a link that we can copy. And when you then open that in a new window, new tab, or on a tablet, for example, share this tab, there we go. We now have our prompter view. So very easy to set up because there's practically nothing to do. It's just sharing that link, opening it on your device that you are going to use as your prompter output. And then here in the top right corner, you can access all of your settings. So from here, you can immediately change your font size to adjust it to your needs. So depending on how far the screen is, how good the eyes are of the presenter, things like that, you can easily change that. You can change your aspect ratio. So depending on which type of screen you are using, if you use a mirroring system, you can do that as well. Change all sorts of spacings. And a very important one is the speed. So in our prompter, when you press, for example, the space bar, the prompter will start scrolling automatically at a speed that you can define. And that is this spacebar slash presenter speed. So here again, you can adjust that to your specific needs. A very important one is that you can also choose your block visibility. So do you want to see all text blocks, maybe also certain cue blocks, maybe only the prompter text block, whatever you want for your specific project, you can select or deselect these different blocks. That will then update automatically. So if I were to show an EVS block, I immediately see my EVS blocks appear here. Then lastly, the last options here at the bottom. So with our Cuez prompter, we also support the use of Shuttle Express jog wheel. And that jog wheel has 7 different speeds that you can configure. So again, we give you all of these options to set these different speeds, and then you can use that jog wheel to immediately scroll at different speeds without having to open the settings and change the spacebar speed, for example. But you can just use the jog wheel with all of your different options. When you're done with your settings, simply close them, and then you can use your prompter. And that is Cuez in just under an hour. So I will quickly have a look. Oh, actually, one more very important thing. Me working in customer happiness, I forget one of the most important ones for myself. When you are working in Cuez, you always have access to this blue button in the bottom right corner. This is our intercom or chat button. From here, you can send us a message, so you can easily chat with us. There's a couple of us that have a look at these messages, so feel free to send us questions if you have them. And you see here, we typically reply currently, apparently within 3 minutes. This updates live, so it's not a setting that we do. And what's very important is that from here, you can also access our help center. We have just over 70 articles currently available, and that's an ever-growing collection. So for example, if you want to know more about episodes, go to the episode section. If you want to know more about the timings, which we went over a little bit fast, you have more information here. Same, sharing, printing, creating your custom blog templates, all of that is explained in the help center as well.